Okay guys, so now what we're going to do today is start your cut paper challenge. And a few things before you get started in Adobe. Make sure that your draft is done. Make sure that you have your draft, that you're aware of the colors you're going to use, that you're aware of what elements you want to have that are like kind of like decorative that come out of the paper. Because once you start working in Adobe, there's going to be a certain order we have to do everything. If you kind of want to go back at the end and make some changes and edits, it's not super possible. It might mean just kind of starting over. So make sure you're very confident on the draft that you have. And once you open Adobe, make sure your document is 11 by 14. It can be either vertical, like mine is, or it can be horizontal. And then lastly, make sure that you have Essentials Classic set up. And come to this little menu drop down. If you're on Essentials, your artboard is going to look different than mine. So go down to Essential Classic, so we're all looking at the same kind of view. And then we'll get started. To do this, to do the cut paper effect, you're going to start with a rectangle. It can be a black stroke, it can be a see-through fill. It's going to fill up the artboard with one rectangle. And after you have the one rectangle, you can either use the pen tool, which is right here, it's P for pen, or the pencil tool, which is the letter N on the keyboard. And you can just draw kind of like a really interesting organic shape. It's important when you do this, if you use the pen tool or the pencil tool, that you're not starting and stopping. You have to do one continuous line, and you have to end where you start. Now, with the pen tool or the pencil tool, if you're not aware, if you double click on it, you can have options to make it accurate to what your hand does, or more smooth and more kind of fixed. So you can leave it anywhere from like maybe this one or this scale. Either one of those should be fine. But once you draw it, check it out for any kind of like weirdness. So this little handle over here, I'm going to address. So once you have your first shape, then all you're going to do is whatever tool you use, whichever one you like, pencil or pen tool, you're going to just keep drawing similar shapes that get smaller and smaller and smaller. Okay, so once you have, now you have a rectangle in the back and you have all these different lines. So now what you're going to do is you're going to use your selection tool. You're going to draw a selection over everything. Everything's highlighted. You're going to come over here, make sure you have your properties visible in these windows. If you have your properties visible, you should be able to see this little Pathfinder option. If you don't see Pathfinder, go up to your menu bar, go up to Window, and open Pathfinder. I have a shortcut over here. So you're going to look for the one that says Divide. The ones visible in mine are Unite, and Minus, and Intersect, and Exclude. But if I go to the More Options, I can find Divide right there. And now everything's been divided. And now what I'm going to do is select everything again and go to Object, Ungroup. So now you can see I can grab individual levels. And the next thing we're going to do is make a gradient to kind of play from. Part of what your goal is to have emphasis, and the way you're going to do that is to contrast your colors, which means that all these little background layers that are going to go from lightest to darkest should be in one color family, like a pretty narrow hue, and then you'll have contrasting elements that come a little bit later. So to do this, what I want you to do is come up with a gradient that, again, is like one kind of color family. And you're going to make a rectangle off the side of your artboard. You're going to hit the gradient tool, and now I'm getting that thing where it's on grayscale, and that's the MYK, so that's what my computer's doing. Yours might have just popped up to a perfect gradient to begin with. Let's make something kind of on the dark side. That's good, and I just for convenience, I'm going to want to make this a 90-degree angle. So I'm going to switch my angle to 90. Yours might default to that. And that should be good for now. So I'm going to hit V on my keyboard, select off of it, and I'm going to also push this off to the side. Now what I have here is a gradient. Now if I want to get the dark color and the light color, and I'm like clicking this and do my eyedropper tool, and I want it to be the dark color, it's not going to do, it's going to be the whole gradient. But what you can do, Command Z to undo that, is you can take this object here, you can rasterize it, which means it's not something you can edit as a vector. So if I go to Object in my menu bar, and I go down to Rasterize, and I'm going to check this. This is all fine. It says OK. And now what happens if I select the small inside shape and I hit I on my eyedropper tool, I can actually get the color, not the gradient. It's kind of a fun little trick. Now all you're going to do is go from darkest to lightest as you move out to the edge, just selecting your next layer, eyedropper tool, find a contrasting value on your scale, and that's it. So I have one that I've made before. I can pull over to this one. And you can see with this one we have all different kinds of, I got moved, all different kinds of different like decorative elements that come out. So based on your theme, if it's a winter scene, if it's an ocean scene, a seascape, you'll have different kinds of elements, and you should know what they are at this point. Because now what you're going to do is you're going to make them, you're going to go off to the side, and you're going to make a couple different elements. I'm going to just replicate the flamingos and the cattails and the leaves. And one thing I want you to do is you're going to use this one new tool as you're making your various elements. Now, if I want to make a whole bunch of cattails like this, I can do a couple things that actually make these kind of easier to make. So what I can do is I can start with my pen tool, and let's come down here and just make the stroke black so we can see it. And if I just take a line and just draw a very simple line, and now what I'm going to do is just make it a little bit thicker so you can see it. And I'm not going to make it a straight line. I'm going to go with something a little more like this. See, it has like a little bit of a tapered edge. I'm going to actually rotate it around like this. And if I come over here and make a very narrow box, and if I use my direct selection tool, I can take all these little widgets, pull them in so it's rounded out, and I'm going to actually make that a fill of black. And now what I can do, I can actually make this also, if you see this up here, it's a little on the thin side. So I'm going to make that stroke just a little bit thicker. There we go, that's good. Okay, now once I have this basic object, if I want to get it to be a little more interesting looking, I want to replicate it, I can do a few things. I can select the whole thing. I can go up to my menu bar and go to Object. I'm going to go to Expand Appearance. And once that's done, it's still selected. So I'm going to come over here to Pathfinder and click Unite. And now what I have is a united object. I couldn't do the Shape Builder tool because the Shape Builder tool is really only about uniting shapes. But since I had a pen mark and I had a shape, this is a different way you can unite something. And now what I want to do is also show you this really interesting tool. So this little puppet warp tool looks like a little thumbnail pin. If I click this, and then I click on, I had to have, obviously this was selected, now I click on here and I do like drop little pins on it. Now what I can do is I can go back to a pin, see how it turns like to a selection tool versus a new one. I can pull this and start bending it. What also do is when you have one, you can kind of take it, copy, Command C, Command V for paste. You can do Object, Transform, Reflect, and you can start kind of changing maybe the angle of it, change the size, and if you can either hold down Shift while you change the size, or if you want to make it a little bit more different looking, that's also fine too. But that's one thing I want you to practice, is making an element where you're combining not just different shapes, but you're combining like a pen mark or a pencil mark and then a shape. So you're using that Object, Expand Appearance, then Pathfinder Unite. And then the other thing I want you to try and do is play around with the pen tool a little bit, because if you've been using the pen tool, there's all different kinds of ways you can make an interesting element with just one mark of the pen tool. So if I select this, This is just a pen mark. And I again come up here to my stroke, make it a little more visible. I could do that kind of mark, which in of itself looks quite a bit like a leaf to begin with. And then again, I select it. I come to the Puppet Warp tool. And you don't have to make a new element every time. You can do copy paste, you can do reflect. That can kind of take your elements, and let's actually put you back in the other direction. But once I have a little grouping that I like, I can select everything. I can go to Object Group. So if you're doing coral, if you're doing seaweed, if you're doing a group of leaves, this is like a really nice option. Now if you're something a little more complicated, you can do just like a silhouette from the internet. So you can do that. If you're working on this and you're going at a good pace and you trust that it can go kind of quickly, then I suggest you try and draw something with the pen tool because you're just doing silhouettes. If you're not confident about your speed, or if things are going kind of slow for you, or if you're missing days, then I would say once you've done this, the other elements you can take from the internet. And what I would suggest you do is let's pull up Safari. Now one thing I would suggest you do is find something that is a silhouette. So if you Google silhouette, that helps a lot because it's better to have no inside details. Even something like this gets a little bit complicated. So the more simple silhouette you find, the better off you are. That's kind of not really what we're looking for this. Neither is this one because it has all that, like that's not a silhouette, it has all that inside detail. So go ahead and pick something that you think works for you. I can try this one. I'm going to do, I think you all know how to do image trace, but just in case you don't, we'll do a little version here. Copy image. And to get this to be a vector, what you're going to do is just have it selected, do image trace, do black and white logo, and hit expand. And now you're going to delete this background so you can see through it. You're going to do your direct selection tool, your A on the keyboard, click off, click on, off, on, and hit delete. And now it's just a nice little vector we can change the color of. So I could just select this and hit K on my keyboard, and I could make this some kind of pink color. And I don't know why my computer has this default for grayscale. That's easily fixed. Okay, so now what you're going to do is you should have your elements made. Spend some time making the elements you want to do, whatever kind of details you're doing. Spend some time making them. If you're going to do clouds, a bunch of circles that are grouped together, and you can use the object, expand appearance, and then Pathfinder unite. You want to unite those things too. But you want to have all your objects made. You want to have them united and grouped together. And then what we're going to do is we're going to add them to the layers that they're going to join. I'm going to add them here before we do the shadow effect. So these are a couple of cattails from before. Let's grab this one. I'm going to do eyedropper tool, wand it to this layer, and then take this and move it over, and click off to see how it looks. It looks fine. So take some time arranging your objects, placing them where you think they want them to go, and then matching the color. So again, I hit I on my keyboard. I'm going to put this one to this layer, then drag it on over. And every time I go back a step, I am going to make things smaller because it will kind of reinforce that illusion if things get smaller as they go back. Okay, so now what I want to do, you can definitely make more elements because it looks really great to have a lot going on. I am going to stop here and show you how to do the next couple steps. So let's get now leave my main element off to the side because he's going to go near the back. So I'm actually not going to put them in right now because they're a different color, so they don't really matter as much. But now what I'm going to do is start merging these elements to the layer they're attached to. So I'm going to select these cattails and this outer layer. And I held down Shift to do that, so now they're all selected. I'm going to go to Pathfinder and merge. And see now how they're connected? This is the thing you have to do before you do the drop shadow effect. So make sure all the elements you want to have that are like cool and decorative and kind of break the frame, make sure they're all happening before we do the drop shadow effect. So I'm going to select this cattail, hold down shift. I don't know how this one went back a level, but now it's fixed. Okay, so I have all my levels except for my contrasting color element, and they all have their details connected, so make sure you're done with that before you do the drop shadow. To the drop shadow, what you're going to do is select everything. You're going to go to Effect up in your menu bar, which I don't think you can see in this video because I don't think it's included, but it's that little gray bar up top. Go to Effect, it's next to Select, go down to Stylize, go over to Drop Shadow. Now everything gets a drop shadow, and you want to make sure your setup might be different. Make sure you're on Multiply, and opacity, you can make it lighter or darker if you feel like when you get the preview it's too intense. As far as the offset, that kind of shows you, right now I have all my shadows on this side. I could change them so they're all on the right, but I'm going to leave them as they are. My blur I'm kind of happy with. I think it's kind of a nice quick fade. And I can change the color too. I can make it from, you can click this, and I can make the shadow a little less harsh. I can make it blue if I wanted to, but black is also fine. That's pretty much black anyway. I'm gonna hit OK. And now this looks good for a lot of it, but not all of it. We want it to look like it's a cut paper effect, so like that every layer goes down. And these layers look like they pop up. So what you're gonna do is take the very inside layer and go to Object, Arrange, Send to Back. You go to the next one, Object, so I can see it's working on this layer, it's working on this layer, on this layer. I don't know why it didn't actually just work for all of them. What I'm going to do is start with this one and do Object, up here in the menu bar, Object, Arrange, Send to Back. Then here, Object, Arrange, Send to Back. Object, Arrange, Send to Back. And last one, Object, Arrange, Send to Back. So now everything looks like it's going down a step, which is kind of a really nice effect. Now the last thing I'm going to do is take this little guy, I'm going to do Effect. Now I can see Apply Drop Shadow because it's like the one I most recently did. It should be up there for you as well. It's kind of a nice shortcut for an effect you're using frequently. And if I put this guy on here, you can see he's kind of like, based on when I made him and when I moved everything around, he's going to slide on in at that level. Let's see if that actually works. No, I want him a little bit more behind. So I'm going to do, let's see, let's undo all, Command Z for all that movement, because now all this is off. So I'm going to take him and make him a little smaller. And make him a lot smaller. You can see what I want is for him to be behind. He shouldn't just be floating. He should be behind this layer right here. So I'm going to actually take him, I'm going to highlight him, and I could just keep doing like Object, Arrange, Send Backward, Send Backward, Send Backward, but that's kind of a lot. If you open your layer, it probably looks like this. If you hit the drop down menu, you can see all your elements. Every single thing you did is its own sublayer. And you can see this is the one I'm on right now. So I actually want to take him and click and then drag till he's behind the layer I want. And now he is. I think what I might do is make one more of him, copy, paste, drag him over here so I can see him, do Object, Transform, Reflect, and let's make him a little bit darker. little more of a tone where you mix it with gray so it doesn't stand out as much. And that's how you do the cut paper. The last thing we're going to do is we're going to put an overlay on everything. I'm going to take this, I'm going to minus that out so it's a little bit less intense looking. And the last thing I want to do is take a paper effect so that this all looks like there's actually like a kind of paper texture to everything. So I'm going to open my layers panel, lock this so I don't mess it up by accident, put on a new layer, and I have there's a watercolor page texture that's in this assignment. So you're going to save that to your MacBook, and you're going to open that. You're going to go File, Place, and it should be in your downloads. And I'll crop the image. Apply. And now what I want to do is I want to change the blend mode for this. So if I come over to opacity and I click on opacity, right now it's normal, which means that one, I can't see through it, but also there's different options of how you blend something. So if I go to multiply, I can actually see through it, which is really nice. I don't have to change the opacity whatsoever. I can automatically see through it. And that gives me this paper texture, which it'll print with. And just like makes the whole thing a little bit more interesting looking. And that's how you do the cut paper. So if you have questions, obviously you let me know. And otherwise, you're going to make sure you save this and upload it to Canvas. And then that's it.